I'm very glad to send you into this great session here. The topic is the virtual aware live streaming, gaming, and new experiences in 2021. And I'm turning you over to your host, Seth Schachner. So, Seth, did I pronounce that right? Was I close?
Thank you very much, Gigi. Great to be here. The audio is breaking up a little bit, so hopefully I'm coming across okay to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, evening to where everyone is out there. Really happy to be here. We've got a really interesting group today that come from a bunch of different, very interesting angles from the digital music world, and we'll dig into that in 1 second. And I've asked for those of you who want to drop some comments or Q&A into the queue there on Hopin, Gigi and her great team are going to monitor that. So we'll try to get to at least some of those during the course of the half hour, basically. Let's just do the briefest rounds of introductions. I'm Seth Schachner. I'm a digital business development and music consultant. I'm based in LA, got a lot of experience in Latin markets with Sony Music and other tech platforms. And I'm really happy to be here. Perhaps we can start with John, and then we'll go around the horn just with the briefest introductions.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm John Petricelli. I'm the founder of Bulldog DM. We're the world's most experienced live stream studio. We're an 8-year-old company. We specialize in best practices for live streaming and have a very deep and heavy core emphasis on music and all. Obviously that's become a very hot topic in the past year. So happy to contribute to the conversation today.
Anne.
Hey guys, my name is Erin McKinnon. I'm the founder of Overview Arc. We're making virtual concerts accessible to all music fans and artists. I'm also a journalist in the space, so very excited to see and hear about the new things happening.
Great. Raymond, please.
Good morning, I'm Raymond Torres-Santos, and I'm a composer of both classical music, and I'm also own RTS Music that produces records and film music and concerts. And I'm also a member of ASMAC, which is the American Society of Music Arrangers and Composers, and I'm the director and professor of composition at Cal State University, Long Beach.
Fantastic, great. I think, Raymond, maybe we might ask you just as we go through the panel, just to speak a little bit closer to the mic there. It's coming in a little bit light this morning. But this conference has got a very interesting vibe to it. I think Gigi's done a fabulous job of targeting something that isn't always covered in big conferences around the world, which is local markets and communities. And I think all of us can agree that whether it's just streaming or the overall rise of subscriptions, that the digital music industry's got a lot of new opportunities that are out there well beyond streaming. And so what I thought we could start, if each of us could just speak a little bit about the opportunities in front of you, whether they're in XR or gaming, or certainly in the compositional side. And we've got a lot to talk about with live streaming, but in particular, how local communities, local venues, even individual artists have been in some ways affected or hopefully helped by by all the changes in digital music lately. And whoever wants to kick it off, feel free to jump in.
Sure, I'd be happy to jump in there. I can give a tiny bit of background before I dive in too much. So we started working with game engines, virtual concerts, live music, combining all this new technology way back in 2017. So before anyone knew why there's reasons to do virtual concerts and a lot more streaming music. And from there, we began to tour these mini pop-ups with live VR concerts all over Germany, France, the UK, in warehouses, churches, music venues. And the idea with this is that you can take it anywhere around the world, but also not only reach your live audience, but reach remote audiences. So when you're talking about community and the opportunities, it makes it for venues, you can outsell your venue capacity. For artists, you can have virtual attendees. And for everyone in the music industry, access these tools we're talking about quite a bit in our suite.
I like to add that it is true that everything really starts small and local. What is really, I think, what is amazing in this new world is that even if you are from a specific town, you have opened up a whole new world and of doing business, which is quite interesting. Is that as a composer, for example, we have available to us composers remote recordings around the world to take advantage of fine musicians, primarily from the Eastern European countries galleries, and we have had those resources for many years. But we composers were a little bit suspicious about really doing it, how we could really rely on musicians and studios and engineers and the final product if you're not there. So what we have proven with this new reality is that is really validated, and that's the way to go. And now you see more and more orchestras in Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Moscow, Vienna, producing recordings for either classical music or film scores, and that's the way to go. And they provide not only a great orchestra and studio and engineers, they even provide services on pre-production, post-production, and sending you all those products via internet. And I could speak to myself, the latest recording that I made was with people from around the world, in Argentina, in New York, in Puerto Rico, in Bulgaria, in Israel. And we get those stems. We get all those recordings that have been produced locally in specific places, and they send to us, and then we put together. The only con about all this is that more and more I've seen musicians and vocalists to record in their own environment, which is good, in their own homes, using their own phones. The drawback about that is that we somehow have lost a little bit of the fidelity of really having live performance and having a good recording at a recording studio with a control, acoustic, and so forth. But what has opened up is the new career of a sound engineer that puts together all those stems and synchronize them. So I think that's a great opportunity for those individuals.
Yeah. So remote collaboration for sure. But what I mean, if you think about some of the big traditional studios, a Hit Factory, a Sunset Sound, Abbey Road, are they doomed, or is there still a role for them going forward?
Well, I just saw a photo of a friend of mine in Zoom just about 2 minutes ago, and saying, well, I'm back at a studio recording my latest score and so forth. So I don't know, there is beauty and there is really value in going to a studio. As I said, you have more control over your final product. And I hope that we will continue appreciating the fidelity of the sound.
No, it's a really important point. Go ahead, Dan, please.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on this, because I think what you're talking about, which is the fidelity of the sound, but also the live performance and being able to sit in front of your computer and be able to stream to, maybe it's for a professional recording, but maybe it's also to an audience in a virtual world. So if you imagine a lot of what's out there, which is these 3D fully interactive virtual worlds.
True.
So this is something that my company Overview Arc is working on. And there's a new technology coming out where you can have these 3 cameras set up that capture you volumetrically and stream you as you are realistically into a virtual world in real time. And you can have your avatar there. That can be the avatars of your audience, very high quality audio, and that interactivity that you get at a real concert. That's so exciting. So I think when you get into streaming in this sense too, there's so many new opportunities for everyone in the music industry.
That's
the audience size. I mean, it's been all over the news at the Fortnite, some of these events in the multi-millions. I mean, I know the video aspects, the 3-dimensional aspects are obviously super cool. And I sometimes talk to my teenagers who are on these things about the importance of audio fidelity, but maybe going back to the main point is audio fidelity, is it the same quality? Is it unrealistic to even think about that, or is it getting there? Give us a sense of where that sits.
For the audio quality itself, I guess it would depend on what setup the artist has at home. We're working with some amazing streaming partners, one being Dash Video, their digital broadcaster in LA. So working with these different experts that have tools, especially for artists, that can integrate into our world, meaning it can adapt to any use case or any type of sound quality that the artist wants to bring in, any level from up and coming, like, I guess, up and coming artist to someone who's selling out.
And it's interesting that you really have brought another aspect, which is really
live. So you're right that there is a challenge there.
I'm really glad that you have brought that idea also, which is really that artists and musicians have to buy new gear in order to really being able to produce at their level from home and so forth. So there is another aspect of the economics of all this.
Yeah. So I wanted to shift a little bit. We talked about audiences, and probably the biggest and most obvious story of the pandemic the last year has just been, watching the live business, which supported so many artists, kind of just get completely crushed. And so, John's coming from one of the bigger gorillas in the room in terms of the new environment of live streaming that has definitely exploded, and yet there's also lots of different platforms out there. So it'd be good to get your take a little bit, because John, I think Bulldog is a very impressive and interesting player that seems to hit a lot of different angles. Just to give us a sense of your experience with live streaming and where you're coming from in these new markets.
Well, certainly it's unfortunate that the lifeblood of the music business, which is the live touring, live performance business, a $25 billion industry, is that we all participate in, whether you're the weekend or you're an emerging artist. That's an important part of your trajectory in your business, and that's largely been suspended for now 13 months. I think perhaps an emerging technology clearly has been live streaming, which largely has been around for a while. I've been doing this for 20 years, and it started to gain traction 5, 6, 4 years ago, but certainly I would say hyper accelerated in the pandemic. And it's also seen an influx of both innovation and capital. I think there are 100 plus companies now that are active in the space. And I think to the bigger question too is community. So any independent live music venue in the country is an important part of just the overall economic ecosystem of a neighborhood, right? I think $1, according to NEVA, any dollar spent at a NEVA venue contributes the ripple effect of $12 to that local economy. Live streaming can certainly help. I think in addition to those new companies, a lot of the platforms have begun to double down on live streaming. You've seen Instagram, lift the 1 hour limit to 4 hours now for verified accounts. YouTube has always been a big player. YouTube also has a higher audio fidelity, no question. All my time in the space, it's certainly well aware to me that audio matters actually more to the artists than the video. And, I'm more in the white label business. So an artist would come to us and say, I want to do this myself. I want to, drive this experience from my own site, or maybe a promoter might say the same thing. And, we try to stream in up to true stereo audio, which really connects with those, with those artists. But there's also, this has also been an important time, I think, for innovation to the betterment of artists. Now you've got 100 plus different options on who to work with, which didn't exist, a year and a half ago. And my advice is talk to those companies, work with them, find out there's deals to be had. Let's be honest, they're not all going to make it. There's just no probability that even a majority of them will, but there's deals and there's experiences that you can do currently that will, put money back to the artist, and no one's going to replace the 25 billion. But I think in the last 6 months of 2020, the live streaming pay-per-view industry generated about $610 million. So there's real money there. It's, again, certainly not the overall ecosystem, but I've seen a point in time now where there's a lot of collaboration between the tech companies, the music ecosystem, and the artists themselves. And you've seen kind of really impressive, cool executions as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've definitely had my experiences with different live platforms, and I know how competitive the market is. But talk a little bit about, if you will, how it relates to local communities. I'm obviously thinking of venues. There was a CARES Act. There's been a couple of acts, I believe, from the U.S. government trying to help. But maybe can you just give a sense on, is the live stream boom, is it helping localities, or is it mostly just a broad-based, national thing that will supplant the concert business and benefit artists more so?
Oh, yeah, this is near and dear to us. I mean, we're working with NEVA. We have been for the last 8 months, and unfortunately, these were the first businesses in the country to go out, stop, and they'll be the last ones, to reopen, which is brutal. And this is not just the owners; it's the people that work there, the doormen, the waiters, the waitresses, the bartenders. This is an ecosystem that is not functioning. And what we have endeavored to do is, I think, to Raymond's point, early on in the pandemic, you would watch an artist perform in their living room, and it was different. It was kind of authentic, kind of cool. Their husband or their wife or their kid or their dog would walk through the set, and we all felt like, hey, we're all in this together. I think as time has progressed, the audiences and both the artists, they want a better overall experience, which is why I think, a platform like these 3,000 venues at NEVA, we should be directing these shows onto those stages. It's the closest thing we're going to get, until now. You're on a real stage. It's an important stage in someone's career. And again, there were 3,000 of them. A good example is we did SOS Fest in October, where these bands performed on these stages and became this 3-day experience on YouTube. The SOS Fest brought, there's a brand partner involved as well with Bud Light Seltzer, but got to see, the Foo Fighters performing at the Troubadour and Miley Cyrus at the Whiskey, the Roots at the Apollo. That's kind of an awareness play, but it also delivered significant, raised $2 million for the Emergency Relief Fund. But I think now, any band of any kind can perform on these stages by partnering, obviously with any one of these other tech companies that are available. Now every social media platform can turn on a live experience. So there's the tools and the capability are there. One of the, I think, other opportunities happening is because the stages have been dormant, we've been able to put in equipment like robotic gear and more bandwidth. So when we do return, it'll be pretty easy. And now you've got a global audience who's now adopted this user behavior, right? They've done either sessions or whatever.
So, over time, and hopefully when, vaccinations have covered as many people and we hopefully pull out of this pandemic, and live events come back, I'm already starting to get, notifications from Live Nation about my favorite artist or a show I bought tickets for last year. What happens? Is there kind of a mix between going back to shows and the consumption of live music streaming, or go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that live streaming will ever replace a live event. And I think there'll always be a place for two, because now the audiences are getting used to all these different formats. It means that there's potential for a greater audience. And when you have these stages where you have Miley Cyrus and Foo Fighters go in, that's not accessible to a lot of these artists who are up and coming. Sure, there might be like 100 tech platforms out there, but are never going to replace the music industry. And small artists still have to build up a following. They need to do PR, they need to have record deals, or they need to find a good independent route. It's very, very challenging to be an artist, or as you all mentioned as well. And what these new ecosystems will enable, between live streaming, between fully interactive virtual worlds, between scanning at home, between having these live pop-ups, it's going to make this all accessible to 2.3 billion gamers in the world who are now becoming virtual concert goers. Also, it's very hard for artists to monetize, for smaller venues to monetize during this time. So what if you can scan your real world venue, upload it very easily, drag and drop into a fully interactive virtual world, sell virtual tickets, sell virtual merch, stream your live performance in their fully interactive 3D. It's an entirely new experience for generations who have grown up digitally. This is an incredible opportunity in a world on digital assets, and the amount of time people spend in there as well and socializing is going to completely transform these new opportunities for artists. It's a very, very exciting time.
It sounds like it's also kind of a new experience. From my limited experience, watching the Travis Scott stuff, or if you're familiar with the platform Roblox, it's well over 100 million young people are signed on to it. It isn't, it's certainly not Miley Cyrus in her den with the dog walking behind her. And some of these things are avatar based, and they're not even necessarily what we'd conceive of as traditional concert performances, right? And I imagine the spending, the consumer behavior, in-app purchasing, there's tons of just different aspects of what you're describing. Yeah.
Now, what is important to note is that even though live performance is desirable, but what we have learned with this new mode of virtual reality is that, for example, let's take ASMAC. Even though ASMAC, which is the American Society of Music Arrangers and Composers, is a national association, primarily, it really focused on people in Los Angeles. So those members who live in Los Angeles took advantage of the live performance of master classes and workshops. But none of the other members in the nation were able to be in LA Now with this new mode, now not we only have really reached out to members in the nation, now we have a new chapter in New York. Now we're considering opening other chapters in the world, and people from around the world are meeting and really taking advantage of all the professional development that we are really creating by means of master classes, workshops, talks, and so forth. So I think that really has been, for ASMAC, has been an amazing new world that we have never imagined that we were going to experience ever. And,
yeah, no, it's a great, go ahead.
And we were starting to have an educational outreach in schools. And even though schools closed, now we're reaching out to more students than we could reach out to only one location.
So, I mean, it is positive to hear that, you know, it is about expanding the market. Sometimes people think it will replace other forms of spending. We had it looks like a question. I'm reading sort of the chat on Hopin here from Betty C. And I think it goes a little bit more to John and Ann's area, but just, you know, about the idea of business models and monetizing. There's global audiences here. Someone in Argentina is going to be on a very different model than someone in the United States or someone in France. I mean, what's sort of your point of view on how these new initiatives get monetized and what different audiences can afford and pricing in general?
Well, I think in all of this emphasis on pay-per-view, people have not paid attention to ad-sponsored live content. And the advertising industry is a $503 billion crazily disrupted marketplace. And one of the emerging monetization models here is brand-powered experiences. And I say that because largely watch time. The reality is people watch live streamed content far longer than they watch anything. Right? We're seeing things solutions we did in the past 12 months through a microsite experience. The average watch time was 41 minutes. And if I'm a brand, if I can get someone's attention for 6 or 7 minutes, that's a home run for me. I mean, the average consumer attention span has dropped from 12 seconds down to 8 seconds, you know, and it's trending, you know, lower and lower. And I say that not for just the biggest bands in the world, but you could be a local or an emerging band. Those bands still have social followings and growing fan bases that can tune in when to watch these shows. So you have an ad partner. There's a big opportunity in that world. I think collectively we have to do better, have a better way of tactfully delivering that into Madison Ave. But also, pay-per-view has now become an adopted, accepted presence. You've got platforms like Sessions that really focus on emerging bands, and Tim Westergren has publicly stated that bands don't need tech; they need marketing to draw people's attention to their shows. And he's got a $75 million fund to promote and market. I believe there's a third window, because when I do pay-per-view shows, the fans watch every single minute of these shows, 97 consecutive minutes of viewing. There's a hybrid where a brand like Samsung might sponsor a live stream, or the local Nissan dealer might sponsor a show by an artist, a Detroit artist. It's a local business. I think that's a really interesting emerging bit, because the brand doesn't have to pay a massive fee because it's behind a paywall, but they're getting the benefit of a highly, a concentrated audience that's going to watch the entire experience, and they're going to be thrilled that it's brought to them by a local business, because now they can, they can actually see it. Or I might want to watch a show in Miami and I live in LA, and it can be an emerging band. So I think there's a lot of opportunity that's going to emerge both now and then when we get into what's called, I think the question you asked earlier is, the big thing is hybrid, right? So people in the room, but also now amplifying the shows out to a bigger audience worldwide.
Definitely. It'd definitely be interesting to see some hybrid models, even if I bought a ticket and had in much the way some of the digital content models in the past have actually worked. I think Live Nation's done that in the past with virtual downloads and things of that nature. We had a good question from Jayudi Cornejo Brieli, and I think, Ann, it's directed towards you, and it kind of goes to the area of independent artists. I mean, how accessible are a lot of these tools and platforms we're talking about for indie artists out there? And I mean, are there any special infrastructure or bandwidth needs you think you need to really make the experience work for everyone?
Yeah, well, I think at the moment there's pretty much no tools or virtual concert platforms that are fully interactive, fully live, that are accessible to artists. That's one of the problems that we're trying to solve. So we're currently in closed beta. We did 4 prototype events last year with our partners. They were indie bands, independent DJs, host. We had fans coming from Argentina to the Philippines and the UK and the US. They're all free to play. Then the artist would sell merch and sell tickets. That's virtual merch and digital merch. The artist keeps 100% of the proceeds from that. So just to log in to set up your profile, there's no cost to start. Anyone could be an artist in this ecosystem. Anyone could start in these smaller venues, smaller clubs with a smaller audience. And the idea is you work it up. So it's almost like you can think of a gamified experience. So once you sell out your smaller venue in the virtual world, you can unlock your bigger venues. You can bring your fan base with you, grow your fan base in a world that transitions to the real world as well. If you want to get to the stage where you have more sophisticated setup for streaming, then you can invest in hardware for your home or for a venue. Venues will eventually have these as well, which we've been talking about. So the whole point with this is that everyone should be able to have it. It should be democratized access. So not just for your Travis Scott or Fortnite artists or DJs at Tomorrowland, but for anyone to really get into this.
Cool. So do you, just so I understand what you're doing individually with your enterprise, is it purely based around XR and VR? Are you also supporting just classic, what we would understand to be live streamed events, or is it a mixed stuff?
Yeah, so we're actually not VR or XR first. The first way that people will log into our ecosystem is on your PC, on your mobile phone or Mac. So fully interactive. If anyone that is a gamer, so in the same way you might play, let's say Fallout 4 or Halo or Fortnite or Roblox, you can jump in on your computer with your avatar, wander around this world. The way we're starting is like a festival. So if you think the first time South by Southwest was set up, it was a smaller festival. You had a couple of bigger stages, a couple of smaller venues. That's going to grow. So we're obviously going to scale this. It's a very technically complex project, but also it's pretty exciting to see how people use it, how people break it at this time. So we're going to slowly letting in more users. Yeah, I hope that answers the question a bit.
No, it sounds super cool. And folks, we're a couple minutes from wrap up. So, feel free to pop one last question, but Raymond, I'm interested in maybe closing with you, getting some of your thoughts on the creative side to this. It's quite a mix of stuff in front of you. And are you optimistic about it? Or does it sound a little complex and too left of a turn from the traditional way of operating?
True, but at the same time, as a university professor, let me tell you about the experience I've seen my students. Now they're able to really use their own notation software and software like Logic and Cubase and so forth to produce mock-ups and to share their screen with me when they are in their lessons, in their composition lessons. So I really, that we don't really waste time as before of going to my office and starting to talk and so forth. Now we go and jump right in. The drawback that I see about all this is that families and students will have to acquire new equipment. And somehow the question is, what will be the right equipment? Where they should go to buy. I think that we should start getting kind of a network or really helping people to decide where to find and what to find out there. And I think that has been the drawback that I've seen right now about families and students to really getting the economics. Second is from the standpoint of teaching, we professors believe that our students have plenty of time because they're home. And what we found is the students are exhausted because every professor is giving them much more work that they usually have done in the past. So that's really is a dilemma right there.
It's hard to slack off in the back of class when you're on Zoom and visible as well, right? It's much more challenging. Okay, well, look, I mean, we could go another half hour, but I don't think we have the time. I appreciate everyone coming in today, Ann and John and Raymond. It was awesome talking to you, and Gigi, thanks so much for including us in this great conference. I really appreciate it.